You just downloaded Unreal Engine and fired it up for the first time, and your first questions are, what are all these buttons? What do all these menus do? Where is everything, and how do I make stuff do anything? Today, I'm gonna be showing you the user interface system within Unreal Engine 5, and I'm gonna be going over the most commonly used menus and buttons that most people will be using for their projects, including the content browser, the world outliner, the inspector, the toolbar, material editor, blueprint interface, marketplace, Quixel bridge, and basic camera control buttons. And if I forgot any important ones here, they'll be included in the video anyways. Today's lesson is a beginner lesson, so if this is your first time running Unreal, this video is going to be for you. My goal with today's video is to just get you introduced to Unreal Engine 5's menus and all of its systems and like how they kind of communicate together when you're working on a project. So you're going to learn the location of these core interfaces, what purpose these interfaces serve, and also prepare you for diving deeper into each of them individually in the future. I definitely feel like it's super important to get a basic overview of all the systems and where they're located before you begin working on your project. So let us go ahead and get started here, and we're gonna jump into Unreal and go from there.
All right, so first thing you get into is the Epic Game Launcher. Once that's downloaded, you can download Unreal Engine from the Library tab right here. Under engine versions, just hit the little plus sign, and here it would give you the latest possible version for you to download, or you could select any version that you want and then hit the little X to undo that. As you can see, I have two versions installed. I'm currently using 5.4.3, which is the latest as of recording this video. So we're going to launch here in a second, but before we get to that, there's also a My Project section. This shows your previous maps that you've created and saved, and what version of the engine they were ran at. And then you have a vault section, which is all of your asset packs downloaded from the marketplace. And a lot of these are actually from free monthly assets that they give away on the marketplace every month. So do check that out. Every month you get free assets. These asset packs would cost you several $100s, and they are giving them away absolutely free every month. So that is awesome from Epic Games as well. You can check the marketplace out right here. I'm gonna cover that more in a separate video. And then Twinmotion and Reality Capture is some different software that they have, and we're not going to be getting into those. Under the samples, you can find some sample projects that you can download and check out, which is pretty cool. And then obviously a news tab is the first thing that usually comes up, giving you the latest news on Unreal and related content. So let's head back over to the library, and I'm going to launch 5.4.3. Just hit launch. When you first open Unreal, it could take a while to load. The first time at about 45%. It's going to be compiling shaders, which does tend to take a little while, so just be patient with that. But that will only happen the very first time that you boot the Unreal Engine up. Now that we're in here, we can see our recent projects. We can select the previous ones that we've made, or if we go under games, we can start with a new blank folder and some basic templates of different types of games. Now, just in case you didn't know, Unreal Engine does way more than just video games. They are in the film production environment with virtual production now, which is awesome. I highly recommend checking that out. You can do architecture visualization type things. They have automotive and product design and simulation as well. So there's all kinds of different things going on beyond games, but we are going to be focusing on games. So for today, we're going to be going with the blank project, a clean, empty project with no code. I'm going to select Blueprint because I use Blueprints. If you use C++ and that's what you're familiar with, go ahead and check that out as well. But I'm going to be focusing on Blueprints. Our target platform is going to be desktop, but you could do mobile if you're planning on making a mobile game. Quality preset, I'm going to leave on maximum, but you can also do scalable, which just disables some of the more high-end features, and they can be enabled later. You can check the box that says starter content if you want to include some folders containing some basic assets for you to use when you're first getting started. I will not be using the starter content today, and ray tracing I'm going to leave unchecked because I don't need ray tracing for this project. Down at the bottom right, we have project name. So I'm going to go ahead and name this Tutorial Map 1 and just hit create, and it's going to generate that for us. Usually doesn't take very long, which is also awesome. Once you get Unreal loaded up, it tends to be very fast once it's all set up. All right, guys, when you first load into Unreal, your default project is going to look like this. As you can see, I can right-click and drag my mouse around and look around the environment. This is a basic map that just has a terrain down, ready to go. Now you don't have to use this map by default, obviously. You could just literally start with a blank canvas and go from there. But this one is kind of nice because it already has the terrain down and some simulated cloud and lighting effects happening. Now right away, the first thing I want to share with you is the content drawer. The content drawer can be accessed by pressing Control and space. So just do Control space and you'll see the content drawer pop up down at the bottom. And then when we click away, it'll automatically hide itself. Now this was not a thing in Unreal Engine 4. This was added in Unreal 5. And I think it's awesome. I love that I get a lot more screen real estate when I don't actually need to be looking at the assets in my content folder. So just remember, Control space is very crucial. However, if you don't want to have to keep opening it, you can also come right over here and dock it in your layout. And when we do that, it is going to permanently stay down here. And you can move your windows around, but for the sake of tutorial, I'm going to keep everything placed as it normally would be. But just a great tip for you real quick, you can move the windows around however you want just by grabbing the tab, and you see how it kind of snaps around. So you can put that anywhere you want. You can grab the edges and resize them just like that. And if you wanted to, you could come up to Window and come down to Save Layout, and you could save this custom layout that you've made and then load it later, or just it'll automatically load it every time you start your editor. So it is very customizable as well, but we are going to leave things as they are by default. To get rid of the content browser window that I just opened, I can hit X right here, and now we go back to our content drawer, which can also be accessed by clicking it down here in the bottom left if you'd rather just click instead of using the shortcut. There is also a console command system down here where we can type in codes to deactivate or activate certain things within the editor that's not enabled by default. Now typically I don't use this a lot. Very rarely do I need to enter a custom command, but it is there in case you need it. Over here on the right bottom side, you're going to see several different things. Now a lot of these I don't use at all, so I'm not going to cover these. However, revision control is good if you have a software installed that backs up your files and you can go through different revisions. So they do have that built in as well. Moving on to some more important things. On the right hand side, we obviously have something going on over here, right? So this is our outliner. Our outliner shows us all of the items within the current level. So for example, our directional light. Our directional light is what's providing our light in our whole scene right now. And you'll see if I hide it with the little eyeball button, it's going to go black. We've got no light left in the level. So the sun or directional light in this case is simulating all of the light. Now here's a really good shortcut to remember for you is if you select the object that you're looking for and you don't know where it is, if you hit F on the keyboard with it highlighted, it'll take you right to the object. So there you can see there's our directional light, and I can actually grab these axes here and rotate it around at different angles to cast the light at a different angle. So we can actually just move this over and make it evening time if we wanted to. So your outliner is here at all times. You can find any of your objects in your scene. So you can select them, hit F to move to them if you need to find them. So it's great to have up at all times and just find what you're looking for. The next thing you're going to be using all of the time is the Details tab right here. Anytime you have an object selected, we could select this icon right here. This is the player start. If I click on that, it's going to give me all the details, the location of the transform, rotation, scale, any tags that we have enabled on it, replication, physics, anything you could possibly need. All the details are going to be listed right here under the Details panel. So definitely really get familiar with the outliner, the Details panel, and your content drawer by pressing Control space. Those are the key ingredients to working on a project within Unreal Engine. Now real quick, I want to mention that this is our viewport that we're currently looking into. It's like a simulated camera, and we're the camera looking around, checking out the scene. So we have different options. We have a mouse cursor to just select things, your typical movement handle, your rotation, and your scale. If you select an object, left click on it, and hit the space bar, that's going to automatically toggle between the move, rotate, and scale. That's another shortcut that you're definitely going to need to know. All of these here, you can just grab the end of them, hold left click, and move it around just to scale them up. Move them around like this, and rotate like this. So very crucial tips to know. And I can just hit Control Z to undo everything I just did, and we're back to where we was. And if you want to redo something, hold Control and Y. That is the redo button. Control Z is your undo button. Moving over to the right a little bit, we have these icons over here. These are also very important. This enables grid snapping. Unreal is based on like a Unreal unit grid map, basically, that they have set up in their own measurements. Now you can actually see this grid. If we come down underneath of the map, you can see the grid. And now obviously you can see that it snaps to each one of these individual little smaller grids. So that is the grid that you're snapping to and moving along. So here's a really good tip as well. Let's say you have this cube and then you want to scale it up. So right here you can see the scale is 1 by 1 by 1. So if we made that 5 by 5, that's going to cover 5 cubes that way and 5 cubes that way. So that's just a quick introduction to how the scaling system and grid units work within Unreal Engine. Now, obviously, if you turn that grid off, you can move independently, not snapping to this built-in grid. You can also change the snap size by pressing the little number right here. You can go anywhere from 1 to 10,000, and that's just going to change the amount that it snaps to. You can do the same thing with rotation. It's exactly the same concept, and the same exact concept with scale. Now, moving over here, we have a camera speed option. We click that, and if you scale this up, it does exactly as you would think. Our camera is going to move a lot faster in the viewport. So that's good for when your map's really big and you need to get places, or you can even slow it down to really get a little bit more cinematic, or if you're trying to do finer details, you can move around like this. And we are just using W, A, S, and D to move around and holding the right mouse button to look around freely. You can use the middle mouse button to go up and down with the mouse, left and right. It kind of like just pans it on an axis if you hold the middle mouse button. And then mouse wheel out to zoom out, mouse wheel in to zoom in. So those are some basic camera movements. Over here we have a button that maximizes our viewport, and now you can see we have different viewports available. Currently they're set to wireframe. Let's change that. Let's make this one a lit, and then instead of back, let's do top. And now we have a top-down view of our level, and we can move around just like this. And it's like a 2D top-down kind of view. Look how cool this is. Now you can see the whole map from a top-down perspective, and I assure you it's the same exact one we're looking at in our perspective. So you can do that as well. You can change it in all kinds of different modes, unlit, wireframe, just to name a few. And then we can use that button to restore our perspective viewport. Now to follow that up, over here, we're going to look at these a little bit more. Obviously, if you click here, this does change your view mode. So this is what lit looks like. This is what unlit looks like. This basically disables all lighting effects so that you can see in the dark. Wireframe is going to show all of the geometry that makes up all the objects in the map. And then there's several others that you can get into, and we might talk about more in advanced tutorials. But there is tons of different useful debugging methods here, so you can enable different types of views to check things out and make sure everything is working the way you intended. With this tab right here, we can switch between perspective, top, bottom, left. And these are, again, like if we wanted to go to a top-down view, we could just do it like this and have it all on one screen. And you can also enable a cinematic viewport instead of the default. And that already, right away, you can kind of see it kind of adds some black bars, crops it in a little bit. It just makes it look a little bit more cinema style, like cutscene. It's a pretty cool feature. I forgot to mention about the camera. You can hold Z to take your FOV out and C to zoom it in. So we can actually zoom in and out. So that's a pretty cool feature that's easy to use. Look at that sun out there. That's crazy looking, ain't it? And mind you, this is only on medium settings as well. Speaking of settings, we can actually come up here to the scalability, and this is where you can set your graphics quality like you would in any video game. You can use the presets or get in and custom change them yourself. I kind of have it just for performance so that we don't have any issues while recording or anything. But you can, if you have a really great PC, you can just go ahead and crank these up. I would recommend probably only going to Epic. There's no reason to use cinematic unless you're actually doing like a in-game cutscene that you need to render out or something crazy. And then there's also this little tab over here If we click on that, there's some options we can change. We can show our FPS. So here you can see I am running 120 FPS right now, solid. And our delay time is only 8 milliseconds. We can turn that back off. There's all kinds of different stats that you can show. You can manually change your field of view right here if you don't want to use the keyboard shortcut. In here, you'll find an immersive mode. Now, this is basically just full screen, so you could click that, and it's going to full screen your viewport and give you a really nice clear view of what's happening. And then you can hit F11 on your keyboard to toggle back out of that, or F11 to full screen it again. So that's the shortcut, is F11. But this is really useful if you want to have more screen space and see what you're doing. And then you remember, if we come over here and click this button for the viewports, there is also a section under here called layouts, and this is where you can actually change preset layouts for all your different cameras that you have. So that's a pretty cool and quick way to get in and just modify things if you want to do it that way. All right, that covers the basics of the viewport. Now moving on to the top toolbar up here, over to the left we have a save icon. Now that obviously just saves our game if we click it. Now, when you first want to save your new map, you have to give it a name, of course. So this one by default would just be called New Map, or you can rename it. And then you would select where you want to save it. So you can save your map by clicking this button, or just by using the shortcut Control S. Control S, Control S, Control S, guys. I've lost several hours of work, even days at a time. Sometimes it seems like if you're not constantly saving your project, you are prone to have a crash and possibly lose data. Now, Unreal does automatically have an autosave as well, and this has mitigated that issue for me. But occasionally when you're working on a big project and you start doing crazy experimental stuff, the game could crash, and when it does, any unsaved progress may be lost. So definitely just Control S, Control S, Control S. And if not, come up to File and hit Save All, or Control Shift S to make sure you save everything. Control Shift S. Now moving on here, you can browse your assets with this button up here as well. So again, we can open that content drawer with this button. It's nice that they have an option for it up there and down here, depending on whatever's close, or use the control space to open it as well. This right here is some different type of modes that we can go through. By default, we're in selection, which just allows us to click on objects and stuff. We can go over into the landscape tab, foliage, mesh paint, modeling, fracture, brush editing, animation. These are all different modes that you can work in. And those are a little bit outside of the scope of today's video, but just to show you, if we click on landscape, it's going to bring up a whole new menu, and that's a whole nother video that we're going to need to talk about. So let's go back to selection. Moving over, right up here, you can see our tab of our current window, and that is just our level that we're looking into. Now, when we open new windows, they're going to come up as new tabs up here, or just separate windows entirely. Moving over to this, we can add items to our project with this. These are like preset things. Now, obviously, you could go to any of these and get stuff, or we can start with basic. You can add regular empty actors, point light, player start, or we can go down to lights. We can add different lights, different shapes, cinematic things. There's several different things in here that allow us to place objects in here. Now, most likely the first thing you would be doing is going to shapes. Let's say you want to make a sphere, and there you go. You have a sphere in your level, and you can move it around. And then if you want to add a light, and then if you want to add some light, you can come down to lights, do like a point light, and move it down, and you can see it bouncing off the sphere in real time. And then over here on this tab, we can click on that, and we can create a new blueprint from here, or open the level blueprint, which is very important as well, guys. You absolutely need to remember where this is. This is going to be very crucial when you're making a game. This level blueprint will control everything that's happening within your level. But just to show you real quick, when you open the level blueprint, and we can drag our window up just like this, snap it in place. That's how I like to do it, and then I can just flick between them. It is just like all of the other blueprints I'm going to show you here in a minute, except we can drag actors directly from our game. For example, this directional light, I can drag it right into here and drop it, and it has a direct reference to that object. Other blueprints, we are not going to be allowed to do this. This is the blueprint you'll need to use to access actors directly out of the level this way. On all the other blueprints, we will have to cast and get references to these objects to be able to make things work. So this is way more performant. It already has the information it needs. Drag and drop. Moving on, we have a cutscene type thing. We're not going to get too deep into the cutscene editor, but if we're making animations for our level, we can add level sequences here and deal with cutscenes. We have the play button, which begins playing your game that you have set up. Escape to go back out of it. These are currently not highlighted, but when we hit play, we can actually just hit the stop button, or a very useful one, you can detach from the player controller. So you'll see if I hit this eject button, or you can use F8. This is our actual player character right now. Pretty much astral project out of the main character body and fly around the level and look at things in real time. Then the cool thing is, at any point you want to jump back into the playable character, we just hit that again, or F8, and we snap right back into place. So this is really useful when testing games as well. Now there is a few modes right here. If you hit these three little dots, we can hit play in our selected viewport. We can open a new editor window, which I'll show you what that looks like. That's a whole different window separate from the viewport we have. Now this is usually good. This is a direct example of what it would look like playing outside of Unreal Engine. So if you want to export your game and launch it, this is probably what it would look like. But if you want to go even further, you can actually run it as a standalone game, which will completely separate it from Unreal Engine, and it will run just like it would if you export and build the game. And then you also want to look at Simulate. Simulate is good if you're doing something that doesn't require your input. Like let's say we have two AIs battling to the death. We can just hit Simulate, and boom, all the code in the game will start running, but we don't actually have to possess a controller and actually do any input. So right now those guys would be fighting to the death, and then let's say one of them die and win. The game's over. Now we can stop it. So the simulate function is definitely really good if you don't need to get in and get some manual input. Further down a little bit, you can start your player at the current camera location or the player start default. If you're going to do multiplayer, this is all multiplayer options down here. You can set the number of players. Let's say you have 2 players, and then what kind of mode you're going to be playing as, and some more advanced settings. But you'll see if I hit play now, there's actually going to be 2 separate windows, and there's actually 2 characters in the game right now. We just can't see each other, obviously, because we don't have any models. If you are going to be doing multiplayer, this is a crucial thing you'll have to do. And there you go. Look, we got our first error. So this message log is very important. Anytime you have an error or anything in your game and your code, this will pop up, and you're going to have this window right here. But yeah, this will tell us where any of our errors are, and we can actually usually click the errors, and it'll take us right to the problem so we can check it out. Now over here on platforms, I usually don't use this too much. This is for packaging your game when you're finally done with it, and you need to be putting it out to test it on actual devices. And now you can see some of the exports that we have currently available. If we want to make an Android game, we can package the project. And if we want to put it on Windows, we can package the project, and that'll give us a final game file to go off of. Now if we jump all the way over to the top right, we do have a settings button. And these settings buttons, we can access several different things. The world settings. The world settings are basically the current level that we have loaded up. Those are settings specific for just that. Now this is good for stuff like if you want to change your game mode. For example, we come down to light mass. Light mass is kind of like the lighting simulation. Let's say we wanted this level to not have as much reflected lighting. We could just change one of these balanced lighting values, and that'll only affect this map when you load it up. So your world settings are useful for just the current level you're playing in. Here's a cool one. There's real-time audio in here. So if you turn this real-time audio on and you have audio sources in your scene, you'll be able to hear them. So like if you had steam coming out of a pipe, as you moved past it, you would actually be hearing it. So that can really make you feel more immersed in your project. And you can also mute it just by clicking the little speaker. You can also access your project settings from here. Project settings are very important, guys. Instead of using settings, I personally just come up to edit project settings. That's usually how I get to it, but you can do either. Project settings has tons and tons of different options for your specific project. Gives you tons of control over things. Some of the big ones are going to be your maps and modes. Right here, you can set what level you want to start up in when the editor first starts up. The mode it's going to be running. Another big one is collision. If you come down to collision, you have object channels and trace channels. You can create your own custom channels for the collision and physics system. This is going to be super important in pretty much every game project. Under the description, you can set a custom project thumbnail if you would like, the description of the project, your current project version, which is cool to be able to iterate through the different versions, and some basic other settings. So tons and tons of stuff here under project settings. Definitely going to want to get familiar with that. Another big one is if you come up here to edit as well, this is also available under settings. But if we go to plugins, plugins are very important as well if you want to add special things to your projects that's not enabled by default. And some of these you can even download off the internet and add as well. But there is tons and tons of plugins already built into Unreal Engine. You can search up here for custom plugins, and all you got to do is hit the little checkbox, and then usually you'll restart the editor and they'll be loaded up. Now let's go ahead and run through a few of the menus up here at the very top, and that is going to be the last little bit that we have on the main front menu page that we see when we load Unreal up. So under File, you can make a new level, open levels, save all your content, save the current level, import objects in, export objects, start a new project, open a project, zip the project up, and exit the editor. Under the Edit tab, we have some undo and read buttons, basic cut and copy and paste stuff. Window is very important. Window, we can open all kinds of different windows that are not currently visible. For example, if you want to see the layers, you can hit layers, and then now we have a whole new menu over here for a different application. Here you can manually open the message log. That's important if you want to go back and read your messages after the last time you hit play. And again, this is where you can load and save custom layouts and enable full screen mode manually this way as well. Now a big one right here for under Get Content is open the Marketplace and Quixel Bridge. Now Marketplace is what I spoke about when the video first started, and it's on the Epic Games Store page where you can go and buy or get free assets for your project and get them imported. Quixel Bridge is a huge one that was recently added not too long ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, into the Unreal ecosystem, and when I first seen it, it was amazing. Now that Epic Games has bought and put it directly into Unreal, you can use all of their assets for free if you're using Unreal Engine to develop the project. So as long as you have an Epic Games account, you can use Quixel Bridge. Now real quick, I just want to show you what Quixel Bridge is and why it is so important. So we're going to open Bridge, and right away it's going to come up, and it's going to ask you to log in probably. So once you get signed into your account, this is Quixel Bridge. This is a huge asset to you as a game developer or CGI artist, whatever you're doing. There is tons of free, super photorealistic, high quality content here. Right away, they have 3D assets, 3D plants, surfaces, decals, and imperfections to choose from. There's currently over 14,000 assets to choose from. Here's their homepage. If we just scroll down, you can see different models, different textures. And these are all photo scanned in from real life, so they look super high quality. But just for a quick example, let's say you need some textures to put on an object in your game. Let's say you want a brick texture. Let's just type in brick. We can just search for it. Here's some 3D models of some bricks that you could lay around in your scene. This one looks pretty cool. Like, let's say I want this. I want to put this on a wall in my game. You can even see it looks 3D, and it will actually render like that just by dragging it into the game. Now, you can come down and select from the quality. You can go low, medium, high, highest. I just use medium, and it's usually pretty good looking. If you really need it to look great, I would go with high. Highest quality is probably overkill. So now we can just hit download, and once it's downloaded, we can hit add and add it to our project. And within seconds, we can even take this and just clip it right up here, have it there all the time. Within seconds, I can go over here, grab a texture, hit the little download button there or download over here, and then just add it to my project, and boom, it would pop up in my content browser right away. And then we can just drag it into our scene. That is huge, guys. It used to be so complicated to go and find good, high-quality materials, but this was absolutely a game changer for the Unreal environment. So do get familiar with Quixel Bridge. If you haven't seen anything about Quixel, look up Quixel on YouTube and just look up some demos and look at how crazy high quality these assets are. Now moving on, let's come back to Tools. Tools is a little bit more advanced. There's some crazier stuff in here that most people's not going to need, but there is a lot of powerful things here to use to check out different aspects of your game. If we come over to build, build is very important for lighting usually. Now, as you probably know, Unreal is based on real-time, high-quality lighting. So usually you don't have to bake a lot, but for when you really want something to be performant or it doesn't really need it, we can actually bake our lights in just like in Unity or any other game program. We can bake our lights using this build menu right here. Now we'll probably go into this a little deeper in some other stuff, but there's also like building AI navigation, build geometry, all this stuff in here. We can manually build that and pre-compute it. There's a quick way to select all objects, all kinds of different select all lights, some quick options for that. If we have an actor selected in our project and we come up to actor, there's tons of different tools available to us right here. And then there's a help menu. You can go to the documentation for Unreal, dev community, learning library, forums, Q&A, all kinds of stuff here you can check out and just visit unrealengine.com. All right, guys, that covers everything on the main menu that you see when working in Unreal Engine. Now I am going to go into a couple more, a little bit more in-depth menus that you don't see right away. Now within the content browser, you can right click and then make a new folder. We can name it whatever we want. So for example, this one I'm gonna name Blueprints. And we're gonna double click that folder and now we can start organizing our files and our contents. So now we right click and I wanna make a new blueprint class. And I'm just gonna make an actor, which is basically just a simple piece of blueprint code with nothing else in it. And I'm just gonna name this test BP for blueprint. Double click that and that's gonna open up the actor itself. Now this is typically what you're gonna be working with a lot of the time. So this is the viewport within the actor. And now if I were to add a sphere, for example, and place him over the default scene root, this is now, just pretend this is your player character. He's a sphere. So now anything you do within your player character is all happening right in here in this viewport. You can see everything. Now there's tons of different buttons here and it might look intimidating, but I assure you this is basically the same thing. This is just the details panel over here. So you've already checked out the details panel. You're somewhat familiar with it. It has the scale and different options you can turn on and off. And then typically, let's say we want to make some code happen. We have an actor now, right? We have a sphere. We want some code to happen. We need to come over to the event graph. This is the blueprints. The blueprints will be found under the event graph. I will be covering blueprints in another video. However, this is where we would go ahead and start coding our blueprint system to make our character do things within the world. And then we would have to come up and hit the compile button. Get very familiar with the compile button. You have to use this every time you make a change. Like if I delete this, it's going to turn to a question mark. Got to hit it, got to hit green. If it's not green, it's not going to work. And if there's something wrong, it'll turn red. But it did turn green and we got the check mark, so that means we are good to go. You can also see that there's little stars after these two windows. That means there's unsaved content. So again, guys, Control S. Control Shift S to save it all. Just Control Shift S all day long, making sure everything's up to date. And now coming back, we have a working character, working quotation marks, if we did something with it. And we could drag this into our level, and there's our player character in the level. That's just a quick example of the workflow there. And now if you come back over to your blueprints, you can make some changes, compile it, come back in, hit play, test it, and make sure it's working. And so that is the basic overview of what you'll be dealing with blueprint systems. Now they do go deeper, but that is the basic overview of the menu. Now another one I want to talk about, let's make a new folder and let's call this materials. We have to have materials to make our game look good, right? So in materials, we can create a custom material. Right click, come up, hit material. You can name it whatever you want, test material. Now we're going to double click that and this will open up the material editor. Within the material editor, you'll typically see the main thing right here, which is your material itself and all of its settings. You could use constant 3 vector to create your own color and plug it into the base color, or just simply click this little box right here, change the color, make it red. It's kind of pink, but so there's our like red pink color. And then see, I could make a constant, which is I think how I used to do it, but Unreal now has where you can just directly set the values. So we don't really need that right now. Now you can see it's kind of shiny looking. So if we raise the roughness to 1, everything's between 0 and 1. That gets rid of the shininess. Or if we want to set it to 0, it'll be like a mirror-like finish. You can see the reflection in it. Looks pretty cool, huh? But yeah, and then when you're done, you want to hit apply. Make sure you save everything. We can close out of that. And now I'll show you, we can drag in a basic cube again. We can pull our content browser up, take our test material, drag it on. Boom, there it is. That looks pretty cool. And there you just created your first material. Now materials do get a lot more advanced, but if you're just making a game prototype, getting started, this is definitely the scope you should be looking at. All right, now let's go back and make another folder, and I'm gonna call this UI. Now, obviously a game needs a UI system, depending on what kind of game it is, but even for like audio settings and all that, you're gonna need some kind of UI. So if you right click and come into, so you're gonna wanna right click and then you'll find user interface, widget blueprint. Just select the default one. UI blueprints are called widgets. If we double click that, quick example, we can take a border, drag it in, and now we have a white background, for example, right? Now just for quick demonstration, let's click this, and you can change the brush color. Let's make it dark, kind of like a dark gray, hit OK. And then you can add text on top of this. Now you can see we have a text block up there. You can see all the different items you've added in down here, and they kind of all hierarchy on top of each other. We can change the text right here to test. Then you'll see it gets updated right here. And this is another blueprint menu. This is the 4th one I've showed you, from the level blueprint, the actor blueprint. We had the material editor, and now we have the UI graph. So here there's things unique to the UI system only. But for the most part, it works very similar to the other blueprints as well. All right, guys, so that's going to be it for today. Just to summarize, I showed you most of the commonly used menus and systems within Unreal and what they do, where they're located, and why you would use them. Now, some of these are surface level and some of them go very deep and they have a lot more complexity. I'll definitely be covering the complex ones in other videos, going more in depth, showing you how each one works, and just give tips along the way on what can help you learn it faster.
Thank you so much for watching today's video. Leave me a comment, let me know what I can improve on for future tutorials, or ask any questions you may have and maybe we can have the community answer them for you. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the bell if you want to be notified when I upload new content. And remember guys, the only way to master something is by consistently learning more and more over time, and soon enough, you'll be an expert.